Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I'm your host, Dr. Nasir, and what's on tap for today? Well, we're doing a reaction video. Matt Walsh went to New Mexico State University. It was a Young America's Foundation speech. It's a question answer period, and there's a young girl in the audience who basically states and says that children, in order to be happy, should be given puberty blockers. Chemical castration should be done to make children happy if that's what they want. And Matt gives his answer. Let's go to my reaction to Matt Walsh at New Mexico State University.
So you've talked a lot about the mental illness and depressed and anxious population in the trans community, but you don't talk about the happy people in the trans community and how these preventative measures of, let's say, like puberty and the surgeries that go for gender affirmation and how these are life-changing and life-saving. I know many people...
How do you know?
Oh, okay, 1 second, if I can finish my conversation.
Okay.
Many people in my life have had these interventions made, and it's saved their lives. I can list dozens of people in my life. So what do you have to say for...
You can list dozens of people who had surgeries and drugs as children and would be dead today if they hadn't?
I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. Dozens of people who have had interventions, including gender-affirming, let's say, therapies, hormones, surgeries, that have made their lives better. I'm not saying it didn't force them to commit suicide, but it made their lives better. What do you have to say for the happy trans community?
First of all, what I'd say about this young girl here is that, first of all, it's got to be anecdote. She says she knows dozens. So that's more than 1 dozen. That's more than 12. And when I go dozens, let me just go to 24, let's just say. So this girl says that she knows in her life at least 24, maybe more people that have had gender-affirming care in the form of chemical castration, have been given puberty blockers, or that they've had top surgery or bottom surgery. That's what she's basically stating here as a fact. She knows them personally, is how she's basically saying it. Then she says, she takes that back a little bit, and now I'm not sure. Is it that you know these people personally and it's saved their lives and they're doing much better and they're living happy, content lives? Or is this just anecdotes that you're taking them out of the air from places and saying that? Because one person to know dozens is unbelievable. Let's hear Matt's response.
And the surgeries that go for gender affirmation and how these are life-changing and life-saving. I know many people...
How do you know?
Oh, okay, 1 second, if I can finish my conversation.
Okay.
Many people in my life have had these interventions made, and it's saved their lives. I can list dozens of people in my life. So what do you have to say for...
You can list dozens of people who had surgeries and drugs as children and would be dead today if they hadn't?
I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. Dozens of people who have had interventions, including gender-affirming, let's say, therapies, hormones, surgeries, that have made their lives better. I'm not saying it didn't force them to commit suicide, but it made their lives better. What do you have to say for the happy trans community?
I guess I would throw it back at you first, because the burden of proof is on you on this one. And I'll explain why the burden of proof is on you. Because, as I went over in the talk, for thousands of years, human beings existed, and there was no such thing as trying to medically transition people into another gender. And as far as we know, there was no suicide epidemic because of it. And then in the last few years, people like yourself have come along and said, we desperately need to do this, or people will be in despair and they might kill themselves. So you are making a claim that contradicts common sense, science, biology, also the entire experience of the whole history of the human race. And so what that means is that the burden of proof is on you to support it. And so I'm going to ask you, you said that people need this stuff so they can live happier lives and potentially it'd be life-saving, you said even. Aside from your anecdotes of your friends who told you so, how do you know that?
Okay, so thinking back to when I was 16 in an anatomy class, when I learned that transgender people tend to have the brain structure that confirms their identity that they identify with. And you can look that up. That's a fact.
I will look that up.
Yeah, it's a fact.
So this girl here, again, this girl here is, let's just take it. When she was 16 years old, folks, when she was 16 years old, all right, she was a sophomore in high school. She took an anatomy class. I mean, she's a medical doctor. She's a psychiatrist. She is trained now in reading brain scans. This girl, 16 years old. I mean, unbelievable. She should get a Nobel Prize in anatomy, in physiology. That's what she should get. Because 16 years old, she was told in an anatomy class that men and women basically have the same brain types. Basically, that's what she's, in a nutshell, that's what she's saying. At least that's what I'm hearing, right? That the brain types are, they're really, aren't really separate. They're basically all the same. Let's see if we can get some clarification.
Thinking back to when I was 16 in an anatomy class, when I learned that transgender people tend to have the brain structure that confirms their identity that they identify with. And you can look that up. That's a fact.
I will look that up.
Yeah, it's a fact.
I will look that up and I won't find it.
Yeah.
It's not a fact. It's not a fact.
Should we all pull out Google really quick and look?
So you're saying a trans man has the brain of a woman?
No. I'm saying that a trans man who identifies as a man will tend to have similar brain structure that a cis man would.
And where did you get that from?
Look it up. I'm telling you, I learned it from my anatomy class when I was 16. And I looked up the fact before I walked up here because I knew that you would ask.
Okay. That's not true, but it also doesn't answer the question. So let's try to stay focused on one false claim at a time if we can, because we might get bogged down.
Okay.
That was great. That was absolutely great. Matt Walsh basically said, okay, look, let's settle down here. What you're saying isn't true. In fact, there's so many things that you're saying have no basis in fact or science, but let's just take one false fact, one false claim at a time, because there's so many that you verbally diarrheaed out to the audience.
So you actually started by saying that blocking puberty, which is chemical castration of a child,
Just one example, yeah.
yeah, is life-saving.
It can be.
How do you know?
Because there are children who have been suicidal that have had these interventions made.
What children? How do you know? And how many children have had that done
Me personally,
and then
I
are still
haven't met
suicidal?
children. Me personally, I haven't met enough trans children to answer that question.
Okay.
But I know
you
that
are
the
making.
research-
Now, she just said, me personally, didn't you just hear? She said, me personally, I haven't met enough trans children. But then prior to that, and Matt should point this thing out, you said you know dozens, which is more than 12. And then how many dozens? 3 dozens, 4 dozens, a baker's dozen? What are we talking about here? Now she says, I don't know that many trans children that well to give you an answer to whether or not chemical castration really makes them happier. You see what happens here, folks? This is what these people do. This is what they do.
research exists.
You're making this statement, you're stating it as a fact in front of all these people. There must be a reason, there must be something that you encountered that led you to this rather radical conclusion that to save a child's life, you have to chemically castrate him.
Not every child, no, sir.
Okay, well, that is what you just said. The drugs we give to kids for puberty blockers, so-called puberty blockers, originally are cancer drugs used to treat prostate cancer. They're also used to chemically castrate sex offenders and child rapists. Now we give them to physically healthy kids. You're saying that we need to do that or they will die And so one last time I'm going to ask you, what evidence do you have of that remarkable claim?
I don't think I claimed that every child would benefit from that.
Well, no, I didn't say you did.
Okay,
You
well,
said
no,
puberty
you did,
blockers are.
you did.
You said puberty blockers are life-saving. What
I
evidence do
said
you have for that?
they can be. The
How do you
evidence
know?
is the encounters with patients who have had these procedures done, and it has saved their, I don't want to say it saved their lives, but it has made their lives better. I can't confirm whether or not they're alive right this second, but there are children that it has helped. So what do you have to say for the happy trans community who has benefited from these procedures? That's my question.
I guess what I have
for
to
you.
say is that your entire question is built on a whole stack of false premises that you can't begin to even remotely defend. So it's a faulty question from the start. I reject your premise. I absolutely reject that there are any kids who need to be chemically castrated in order to be happy.
Okay, let's.
I reject that.
And there you go, folks. Absolutely. I stand with Matt Walsh on this million, billion, trillion, gazillion %. Basically, the premise of her question was not, she did say not all, but the question is then where do you start beginning to draw the line? What do you mean not all? If there are some children that you think benefit from giving puberty blockers and hormone treatments and hormonal shots, testosterone and estrogen and Lupron and all these other chemical castration drugs that Matt basically pointed out and said they were initially cancer drugs for prostate cancer. Then they started giving them to sex offenders and rapists to basically block those specific nerve centers in the brain to nullify the feelings that these people get. In other words, chemically castrate them. Now we're going to give it to healthy children. So he's asking the premise is that her premise, some children, maybe not all, need these hormonal treatments, these hormonal blockers, puberty blockers, to live better and healthier and safer lives. And Matt's basically saying, where is your scientific evidence for this? In order to get that type of scientific evidence, we are going to have to give normal children, healthy, able-bodied children, these puberty blockers for not just 1 or 2 years, but for 5, 10, 15, 20 years out, and then check and see. And is that something that we want to do? Do we want to give children drugs that are going to stunt their adolescent growth, stunt puberty, to find out whether or not it actually makes them happier? I mean, what person would be doing that other than Joseph Mengele back in Nazi Germany, folks? I ask you, what? We appreciate you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I've been your host. My name is Dr. Nasir. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, like, share, and follow us. Let us know what you think in the comments below. And I'll leave you with my final thought, which is, when you're right, you're right. And when you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, take care and stay safe.